episode of Chesed Marriage Podcast. And this one is going to go a little bit deep. So if you have little ears in the car, or if you have little ears with you, we're going to be talking about not necessarily sexual intimacy, but some emotional difficulties that Michael and I dealt with early on in our marriage that Thad and Michael talked through. Help of someone that we trust very, very much that goes to our church. We were able to get through that. And then on the other side, just being there for people who go through similar things.
So what we thought about this episode was some stuff and topics that came up, and we figured it would make good content to go ahead and talk about, because it's probably something a lot of people have questions about or maybe not be willing to ask. And so what we thought about is going ahead and recording it again, going ahead and sitting down and recording it as we talk. So I guess what we'll do is let Thad explain a little bit of the backstory and ask a question that he had asked me 12, 13 years ago. And then Megan and I can talk through how we walk through it, the perception Dad had, the perception that we had, and then how we walk through it.
Yeah.
So I would come down and visit them. They just got married. They just moved out of their apartment. I think they lived there about a year and a half, 2 years.
A year.
So we had like 6 months in the very first one.
We had 6 months in the first apartment, about 9 months in the second one.
Yeah.
So I came down and coming down, helping, fixing. So they
changing
just got
out the windshield wipers.
Yeah. And you laugh about it. That's one thing I always brought with me. I would know Michael's vehicle. He would never change his out. I would always do his windshield wipers. But I came down and they got a new house. And it was the first time ever visiting. First time they were in the house, in their apartment. Never came down because it just didn't have a room. But came down, was going to help Michael. We're doing security cameras. We had some new fan he wanted to put in. He wanted to put this big fan in his living room because he wanted the airflow, all that, and just see the house, just celebrate with them. And I came down. Layout of the room was, you walk in, TV was on the, you walk into the living room, TV was on the wall, had a long couch on this side, a love seat in the back, and then Michael got this big
Cat number.
Yeah, it was this big lazy boy thing. And it was the first night there, or the first couple of nights. I think I stayed maybe 4 or 5 days. And I was sitting in the back, and I started noticing it bothered me because if I'm with someone, I want to be close to them, sitting next to them, and just having that kind of like intimacy of touch. That's
Judah.
Yeah. Someone
He's Judah in the 6'4".
I like to have that touch whenever I'm with someone. And growing up, farm, everything else, when you were intimate and had that communication, it was, you hash it out, and then we played game nights. We did that stuff. It was very intimate afterwards. And I was sitting there, Michael's sitting here, Megan was sitting over here. And after the first night, I was just like, oh, it's just something I'm noticing. There's nothing going on. Second night, I was like, this has bothered me. I don't know how to have this conversation with my best friend. He just got married. It's the love of his life. Like, he came back the first time you guys started dating again. And when we were in college, he's like, I'm marrying her. I just don't know when and how I'm doing it. And I was like, okay, I don't know her, but sure, let's do this. And then come down, and I'm like, they're not even touching each other. What's going on? And so me and Mikey, at the time, we would ride motorcycles. So we went on a motorcycle ride. There was this hole-in-the-wall place Mikey knew about. We drove out. I don't know the roads and everything. I just followed. And we got there, and we're sitting
down by Sergeant.
And we got there, and we're sitting there, and I was like, man, I don't know how to have this conversation with you. And this is the first time that I actually brought something up that could potentially, he tell me to go pound sand, because it was gonna maybe make a rift because he was married now.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to have that conversation because we're best friends. Up to that point, it was just man-to-man conversations. It wasn't, I see something, is it going to break you guys up? And I didn't know how to have that conversation. So we sat there, we had this Philly cheesesteak, this guy made it, was amazing. And we're sitting there about halfway through, I was like, man, I gotta have a conversation with you. I don't know how to have this, but I feel like I need to have this conversation. are you guys getting a divorce? And I was like, I don't know how to have that. He just looked at me. We just sat there for a moment. He was like, no, we're not getting a divorce, but we're working through things. And I wanted to have that conversation that maybe people might not know anything, because I've been there through thick and thin. I think there'd be like a fun series of me just asking you questions of, I know points in your guys' marriage that I've asked him, how do you deal with this? Because now we're married. There's points there we coming back, and I have the memories of him saying, I don't know how to deal with this either. And he had to go do mentorship, and he's definitely mentoring me in our relationship and telling me to go seek
where I screwed up.
Yeah, where you screwed up. And,
don't do what I do.
And that's a beautiful thing in the Bible, because it's also telling you stories of people screwing up, people, different things. So I think this is an amazing thing, and people really connect with this. And he told me that I don't know where we're at, actually. I am looking for a mentor, and I'm trying to deal with it. Because he said, there is something, but we're not getting divorced. I was like, what can I do? Because I wanted to serve you guys. I wanted to know what I could do. And he's like, right now, just pray, help me fix a couple of things, because it's really bothering me around the house, not getting stuff done. So I helped. Now that you know that question I asked him there, can you guys share on looking back 12, 13 years, what is some things that we can gain from, the audience can gain from, that at that moment, I heard his perspective, because I've asked him now what was going on.
No.
Now that you know that the backstory that I was looking at that time and everything else of like what's going on, what is something that you can share, or you both can share, that people can understand and know what they can maybe be struggling with, and what there's a light at the end of the tunnel that you guys were able to go through?
Yeah. So for me, what was happening is I had lost, it was the summer, maybe early fall of 2012. And I say that because we had moved in to the Audubon house May of 2012. And December of 2012 would have been 2 full years. So at work, I allowed where I felt valued, where I felt wanted, where I felt appreciated, I allowed that to consume my mind and my heart. And I say my mind because that's my will and emotions. And I say my heart because I emotionally gave my heart to someone that I was working with at the time. And I was frustrated sexually. I was frustrated with my body image. I was frustrated with finances because we had just bought a house. This was actually the first time as an adult that Michael and I had to make decisions where my dad wasn't covering me. And I say covering me loosely because a lot of, obviously, growing up, financially, our family was very, very blessed. My parents were always very benevolent. And Diane, we talked about, I heard you talk about this a little bit earlier about finances. So I grew up with finances that I had no idea what was going on behind closed doors, what my dad was taking care of money-wise. And I don't say that, taboo. What I mean is I never saw our family want for anything. I'm not by any means saying that we were rich, but finances and money was not an issue. It was a non-issue in our house. If someone in the family needed something, my dad, helped cover that. My mom provided elaborate, big dinners, and we always flipped the bill. And even as a kid, I recognize that because my dad has always been a giver. Both parents have always been givers. Now, as an adult, I understand some of the strain that put on their marriage. Of course, my parents, both of our parents have beautiful, beautiful marriages. But that was the first time that I saw us actually starting to struggle because we had electric bills, we had windstorm insurance, we had flood insurance, we had
a lot more responsibility.
It was a very, very heavy responsibility, and the honeymoon and intimacy had started to wear off. I stopped caring about my body. I allowed, fluctuating weight gain affect me. And just to be blunt, sexually, I was not attracted to him because he had gotten to, that was probably one of the heaviest parts of where you were in your life. Where it was getting to the point where I was actually just disgusted with what I would see underneath clothing. And I didn't have it in me. I didn't want it. And it started to affect my emotions. It never got physical. I never had a physical affair, but I do believe that it's true, that you need to be very, you need to guard your heart and your emotions. I don't agree with hetero, like male and women. I do not agree with, now being on this side of it, I don't think it's healthy, nor is it safe for men and women that are not married in an intimate relationship to exchange their emotions. I don't think it's, I don't believe in that. Because going through what I went through, I understand now the damage and the harm that the enemy can use and put a wedge in between you and your spouse by doing that.
Because what he does is, Michael doesn't understand me because he's not a teacher, or he's not this, or he's not that. Or Megan doesn't understand me because she doesn't work at the plant. And when you start projecting that on someone of the opposite sex at work, you start developing a soul tie with them in an unfamiliar area that you're not allowing your spouse. And if you allow somebody else to have a stronghold in your life that your spouse isn't able to come to, the enemy runs with it, because the first thing he wants to do is destroy marriage. And one of those conversations, I remember we were sitting on the back porch, and I was just like, what's going on? And I remember telling her, or we were talking, I remember her telling me, I love you, but I'm not really in love with you, and I'm fine if we never have sex again, because I'm just not attracted to you anymore. And I remember it just completely killed me. And it was something one of my mentors had taught me was, and we get to that later, but what was going on at that point then is I started pouring into work because I wasn't getting anything, I wasn't getting validated or sought after at home. So I leaned in more at work, and the more I started leaning into the work, the better I started performing at work, the more promotions came, the more accolades came, the more enticing it was to keep leaning into work. The facility I was running at the time did not run well. So there was multiple 36, 48-hour days where I would leave not knowing if I was going to come home or not. My job was literally to keep the plant running. So whatever it took, like I would literally
get up and go.
I would get up and just have to go.
And we didn't have kids at the time. So
and I'd be gone for a couple of days at the time. Megan would be teaching and would be at work till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And we both just leaned into our careers because honestly, what we thought marriage was going to be like wasn't what it was manifesting. And so we were leaning into things that we could control, that were easier to control.
Or things that were familiar.
Then leaning into actually working on this. We had... we had, what did the doctor call it? Personal pH issues, where sex was actually painful.
Yeah,
for both
so
of
I mean,
us
and there's that
period.
dynamic too. I was struggling where intercourse was actually uncomfortable. And it wasn't, I mean, I didn't realize that I started going through some pH changes. I had no idea. I thought I was weird. It would, it was irritating. Like it was literally irritating.
It's like you're pouring acid on yourself every time we had sex.
It was uncomfortable. And I was like, this isn't it. Like I'm forever of this? Absolutely not.
I remember telling her one night, I waited however many years for this. I was like, nah, that ain't what I signed up for.
And I remember, like, even after we would have sex, there would be moments where we would just kind of look at each other and we were just like, no, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So
that's the backstory, though, and what was happening and what Brad was picking up. Mm-hmm. And so what both of us knew, neither one of us believed in divorce. So we knew we weren't going to get a divorce.
Okay, and let me clarify what he means by that. I knew that God hated divorce. I knew that. But let me clarify that. God hates divorce, and that term is so overused. Yes, it's scripture, but people take it out of its character. God's nature and his character is that he loves his kids, and he made marriage to be a blessing. When people hear the word God hates divorce, they think that it's the person that's choosing the divorce. That's not what it is. The reason why he hates divorce is because it breaks up the covenant that he had intended.
And there's never a clean break.
And there's never a clean break because he intentionally created it for forever.
Well, it's like he hates sin, but he doesn't hate sinners.
Yeah, exactly. And so I knew God hates divorce, but I took it from, I don't want God to hate me. So I'm not going to get divorced. No matter what it takes, come hell or high water, I'm going to fight through whatever I have to fight through because my personality is I'm a people pleaser. And I knew that wasn't, I had been schooled well enough in scripture to know that I know that God's going to love me no matter what, but I know that he hates divorce. And I know that that's not something that I want for my family. I don't want to bring that into the family. And that was just not enough. Divorce was never an option for us. But for me, it was more on the lines of, I don't want to disappoint God. It had nothing to do with a deep relationship. And also to clarify, because I had allowed, so I'm going to use the 5 finger, because I had allowed work, which is supposed to be the very least of what God entrusts to you. First is the relationship that he has with you. That's the first thing that the Lord entrusts. Second is your spouse. Third is your children, church, and then of course, work.
Church and family
and work. I had allowed this to now become my God and my idol. Anything and everything that I could do to worship that, and receive gratification, receive recognition, accolades. It was the same. So where looking back, I had allowed what I was getting at work, either it be through a coworker, and when Michael was saying, like, we both stayed at work really late, where I should have been having the conversations with my husband, I was having with another friend who, guess what? She was also going through a divorce. She was also going through some family struggle.
You deserve better. You
deserve better. He does not. He doesn't understand what he has in you. I mean, both of us were in a situation where we had allowed those things to settle in, and I wasn't secure. I was not where I needed to be and secure enough in my relationship with the Lord as a wife now, as a spouse. I didn't know how this worked. Like, I mean, other than seeing what my parents would do and other than seeing relationships outside of ours, I was just kind of fumbling along because I didn't intentionally put in the time to seek the Lord first.
Which was another trap, because it wasn't something either one of us was comfortable going to our parents to talk about.
No.
It's like you raised us to do all this stuff, but now we feel like we're screwing it up.
Yeah, be perfect at it. And sex is supposed to be, that was another thing. I grew up, sex is safe for marriage. Sex wasn't gross to me, but it was a lot. And early on, before I got married, I had given myself to someone else, and it was very harmful. It was very damaging. It was very painful, not even in the sense of pain, feeling pain, but emotionally painful. And so I was like, I can go the rest of my life without having sex, because number one, I did it with somebody that didn't really love me for who I was. And it was just a feeling. It was just this, want to get it done. And now I'm supposed to do it with this man forever that I'm not even sexually attracted to. This is for the birds. Like, I will be celibate the rest of my life. I should have been a nun. These were the things that I was telling myself because I had allowed the enemy to take my insecurity of my body, take the insecurity of where I was in my relationship with the Lord, which, to be frank, I knew the Lord, but not in an intimate way where I needed to be, especially to be married to someone else and take that into the mix. And I also allowed my heart to wander, my heart and my emotions to wander. So, no, I didn't want to touch him. No, I didn't want to be near him. I was just trying to go through the motions, basically.
And if we did do a date night, it was always with other couples.
Always.
So she was never alone with me, which would annoy me. Because going back to previous conversations about conversation in general, she would always have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 10 other couples. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling her, you can't just go on a date with me. And what it felt like is, and this is what I brought up, and we can talk about it now because we don't get emotional, like we don't get hurt about it, because we've had all those conversations, right? Yeah. You can't drive a tank across a toothpick bridge. It felt like you were it felt like to me that she was content because it was a better situation than what she had been in previously. So it's better than where I thought I was going to end up in life. So I'm just fine just being here. Just keep paying my bills and it'll be fine. Okay. And if I feel bad for you, we'll have sex, but that's it. Just keep paying my bills. And I was like, this sucks. Like, this is for the birds. Yeah. And hence the conversations on the porch. And then as we're going through that, I remember sitting there and thinking, this sucks. It's for the birds.
Well, but also there was a moment too where I think it came to the point where, no, I wasn't in a good spot. And you look back and you're like, God, where were you in all of that? And I
We was holding
remember,
us together despite what we were doing.
I mean, really, I remember going to church and being next to him, and just inside, internally, I was crying out because I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew deep down that what I was doing, I was allowing my heart to wander, and it wasn't being tethered to my husband. So what saved us was finding community in church, finding community in people that were like-minded.
That were pouring life.
That were pouring life, speaking scripture, speaking life over us, speaking truth, because the word never returns void. And because I was in a place of desperation, and because I knew that this isn't what I wanted for our marriage, if I said it out loud or not, I was searching. I was searching for, there has to be more. And there was a place of vulnerability. And I remember showering one night. Actually, I don't even think I shared this with you, but we had just had sex, and I was crying because I was, flushing it out and just getting it out. And I was crying. I was like, God, I truly love this man, but something's going to have to give. And I actually prayed that, knowing that what I was doing at work with the conversations that I was having and had were against God's will for a marriage. But I actually prayed that. And I remember thinking and saying out loud, praying, Lord, something has to change my heart, or change my perspective, because I knew I had heard enough about church, about marriage, that you can't fix your spouse. You can't change your spouse. What you can start with, if there's a problem, you can start with you. And it wasn't, but maybe the next day even, or like a couple days later, Michael came home and I was cooking, and he saw me in the kitchen, and he walked up behind me and he just held me. And of course my reaction is like, I don't want to have sex right now. Like, I really don't want to have sex right now. And he just leaned his head on my shoulder, and he was like, can we talk? And he turned me around, and he actually sat me up on the counter. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm.
He sat me up on the counter, and he held me close, and he was like, is there someone else? And I broke.
Because the Lord had told me a few weeks before what was going on. But I needed her to tell me, because if she never told me, our trust never would have been rebuilt.
Yeah.
Because if she wasn't willing to actually tell me, there was no way I was ever going to be able to fully... I shouldn't say that. The Lord can redeem anything. I knew that I was going to have a lot of headwinds trying to rebuild full intimacy.
Yeah.
So this is all what's going on whenever Dad makes this observation and asks. In the meantime, I knew that I didn't know.
Oh, mind you, this conversation happened after that. Like, Thad wasn't there for that, obviously.
Right.
But whenever I think he brought it up, and then over the course of time.
Well, what happened? Well, you finished that story. I cut you off. Whenever you finally broke and you told me.
Yeah, so he had me sitting up on the counter. And I remember it was the counter because we had just got, we had just got granite. And I was wearing shorts, and it was really cold. But also, there were cereal dispensers behind me. And when he picked me up, my elbow knocked the cereal dispenser, and there was just cereal all over the counter. And in my mind, immediately, I was like, I don't want to have this conversation. I want to clean this up. And I remember him because I looked to my side, and he grabbed my face like gently like that. And he was like, we're talking. Is there someone else? And I just started crying. And that's when we started the unraveling of the conversation. And I want to say that conversation went on. I mean, that was right after you got off home for work. And I want to say that conversation went well on into like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I will say it ended well. And that was probably the longest sex that we had after that conversation, just because I finally felt free. And the very next day, I went to work, and...
I actually said thank you when you finally told me.
Yeah, that was the first time that we said thank you after sex, yeah. So I went to work the next day, and after school, I told my friend group that I had been staying late with, I said, hey, this ends here today. My marriage is suffering, and I want to make this right to my husband. And this ends today. And cold turkey, like, we actually had we had some grade level changes, and some of those people moved from that grade level. And they actually eventually ended up, I say eventually, it took a few years, but they actually left the school. But it took, number one, it took him listening to the Lord, being willing to have that conversation that came on by a friend. And it also took me actually coming to a place of desperation in the Lord. Had I not had that, had I not had, that foundation, I know for one, the foundation of knowing at least just the bare minimum of, marriage isn't all about sex. Marriage isn't all about physical attraction.
A lot of times, though, sex is a physical indicator of emotionally how you're doing.
Yeah.
Because
and I knew enough
it's the
about
most
that.
vulnerable spot for both of you.
Yeah.
But when she says that, we're talking about the peer group at work. It had got to the point the male in the group had actually started coming to our church and would try to sit between me and Megan.
I think that only happened maybe once or twice. A couple
I
times.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, he would literally show up and try to sit between us. And he would try to sit, if I was sitting on the aisle, he would try to sit next to me. And this was probably one of the most challenging things, second most challenging thing I've done in my life. And the Lord told me I needed to befriend him because he was lost and he was hurting. And I was like, you don't realize what this person is doing. And he's like, no, I do. And like Megan said, nothing physical ever happened, but he had me go read Hosea over and over and over and over. And so I read that book probably like 6 times in 2 months. And I remember he would call me, the guy would call me, and he would ask, well, he'd message her first, and I would take her phone and I deleted the contact. And at this point, she had started respecting the fact that it was like, hey, we had made a rule at that point, we don't bring somebody of the opposite sex into our relationship, even if it's a friend.
Which we found out later at a marriage conference. That's like rule number 5 in a rule of very, very short list of things that you should and shouldn't do in a marriage. Don't have private messages or even text messages with someone of the opposite sex.
Outside of work.
Right.
So there was some stuff for work.
Right.
But it was like if I met somebody at church that I think would be Megan's best friend, if I had met them and served with them and started a relationship with them, I say relationship, started an interaction with them, I would not then bring them in and say, hey, Megan, I really want you to meet them because I think y'all be great friends. Because what we found out subsequently that we found out doing it the wrong way is psychologically it feels like they have a leverage up over your spouse. And so we never did that. We learned not to do that, which was hard because my wife's a social butterfly, right? And
understanding that personality, which I really had to start working on that.
Well,
myself.
You started trusting me if I told you I didn't feel good about somebody, no matter how close she thought about it ended, and vice versa. And we gave each other that authority because we were putting our relationship second only to God. And so if our spouse wasn't comfortable with someone, we cut it off then. But finishing back on that story, I started having direct conversations with that one individual in particular. And they would always ask me, well, is Megan going to come? And I said, no, it's just, they would ask if they'd come over if we were having a Super Bowl party or something. And I would invite them, but only if she wasn't going to be there. And then they quit showing up because I purposely cut off that part because I felt like the Lord was telling me right now, you're the only person that's showing them Jesus at this moment. Now they drifted off and they did their own thing. They did their own life. They're doing their own thing. But it was a turning point for me because what the Lord was showing me. Because at this point, we hadn't had that conversation. And
yeah, I say this was several months after their interaction and this thing, kept progressing.
But what I was saying though is I felt like the Lord was showing me, had I gone in Rambo style, guns a-blazing, it would have drove that relationship even tighter and deeper rather than cutting it off because you would have justified, you don't understand me, you don't know me, you don't know anything. So as we're working through that, I was like, well, nobody ever taught me how to deal with this in life. And so I had already sought out a mentor earlier because I realized I didn't know how to do marriage. And so the mentor that I had sought out is a jewel. And they don't like being name dropped, so I don't name drop them. But they're a jewel. And they would meet with me weekly for probably the first 6, 7, 8 years we were married. Every week we met for at least 2 hours.
And then we also started meeting with our pastor at the time.
We started meeting with our pastor because we realized we were jacked up and we needed help. Anyways, in that, one of the things that my mentor taught me was when you're dealing with an issue like that in your marriage, something that they had heard a while back and they had practiced at one point was when sex has become an issue, eliminate the sex. And I was like, man, I don't know how to do that. Like, I'm pent up like an 8th grader. Like, what are we doing here? And they told me, pray for the Lord to kill your sex drive until you can love your spouse how he loves him. And I did. It was the scariest prayer I ever did. It was one of those nights after we had that passionate discussion on the porch. And I remember looking at her, and I'm like, she looks like she's sleeping peaceful. She probably was, because I wasn't asleep yet, so I wasn't snoring. But I remember I was as fired up and mad as a hornet, and I was just ready to flip a lid. And I remember sitting there, and the Lord's like, what are you upset about? And I'm like, how can she sleep when we're having all these issues? And he's like, we're having issues or you're having issues? And that's where he had really drove home the point. If you want to see a change in your marriage, you start with you. And I said, I'm having issues. And he said, okay. He's like, how do you love my daughter? He goes, do you think I gave you my daughter just as a sex toy? And I was like, no, but it had got to the point we were having so many issues. That's the only way I viewed it. And when he showed me that I had changed this beautiful gift that he had given me into a physical pleasure toy. It's a little dramatized, because it wasn't like all I ever did was like, Meg, just come give me sex. That wasn't the case. But it was like, he's like, I remember praying that night. I said, Lord, kill my sex drive until I can see my wife how you see her. Because at that point, all I could see was red whenever I saw her. And I can love her how you love her. My sex drive shut off. And I don't think we had sex for like 6 or 8 months. And then to the point she was like, are you seeing someone else? And
yeah,
like, no.
I started getting really concerned.
She's like, are you addicted to porn?
Well, because
are you
it
seeing
was,
someone else?
and that was something that kept coming up, but it was in a way that's like, hey, and honestly, you look back at it and it's like, had we not gone through that storm, a lot of the frustrations or the struggles that each one of us had, it began to open a door of trust.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
real intimacy.
Real intimacy. And we started, like, and we've shared this before, like, Michael struggled with pornography because he was introduced to it from a young age. And so, and of course, I was brought up on romance movies,
Telenovelas.
Yeah, telenovelas, and sex is supposed to be this, this thing. So I think both of us had an opportunity to really talk about what our expectation was with our sexuality, with our sex, with what we were expecting.
What should it look like?
What it needs to look like.
What does our sex life look like? Because it doesn't have to look like Hollywood. It doesn't have to look like Disney.
And it changes. I mean, it changes. With every kid, it changes. I mean, and it starts.
Or every season, too, even between kids sometimes.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. It starts different for every individual, especially, men and women. It starts different. Like, for us, it takes some time.
But that goes back to when I killed my sex drive. I asked the Lord to kill my sex drive. He did. Then I was scared. I was like, please turn it back on. And he's like, you're fine.
No, but I did ask the question. I was like, are you looking at porn? Like, how are you okay? Because we haven't had sex in
When you got more mad at me at first, you would get more frustrated with me at first. Because I wasn't fighting.
It was a switch.
Because then when I wasn't fighting back, she's like, you don't care about me enough anymore. And I was like, no, because I care about you, I'm killing this.
I remember grabbing him by the face, grabbing him in the face. And I was just like, why don't you just want to fight with me? Just fight with me. And it was over something dumb, like groceries or something. And I was like, just fight. I want you to just have that passion that you had. And he was like,
telenovelas.
I guess, I don't know. But it was, I just wanted him to respond. You don't even care about me
enough to fight. And it wasn't that I wasn't responding. I just wasn't responding in the physical.
Yeah.
I was responding in the spiritual, and I was praying about it. And because I knew in the scripture that the Lord had used through my mentor and through a Bible study to teach me was Jacob and Esau. And when Jacob came back and ran into Esau, and he sent his wife he didn't love as much first, because he's like, if he kills her, at least I'll get to keep one I like. And then he sent his wife he liked second. But when they finally embrace, and he said, let's go have a party. And Jacob says, I can't because the yearlings and the children are young, and if I drive them hard, I'll kill them all. And what the Lord showed me that day is your family can only go as fast and as hard as you're willing to go, but you can't drag everybody along with them. And they can only go as deep as you're willing to go. And I knew that if I didn't fix the issues in myself, my family never could. And so that's what started me on the search on, as one of my friends calls it, a seek and destroy mission for any lie that you believed in your own self. Because if I'm not willing to go there as a spiritual leader of my house, my family can't go there. And they won't be able to deal with it. And how can I sit and ask my wife to get a speck out of her eye if I got a plank in my own? Right?
Well, and that honestly started a journey of, so obviously with us, kind of working through issues that really opened up an opportunity because I first trusted my husband, where I started to realize, there's some significant insecurities in me. Why was I so hungry for attention from other people? Why wasn't just being with him enough?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, it's a personality that I had. Well, let's go to the root of it. I wanted that attention.
Right.
And I sought out that attention from anyone that would give it to me. That's why I looked for it outside of where I should have gotten it from. And so I started to ask friends that knew me really well, and some really hard truths about people that really knew me started to come up. And those were things that I had to submit to the Lord and be like, well, I don't want to be this person. I've been called a hypocrite in a loving way. And it was hard because this person that said that to me, they said, I want people to know the Megan that can be just Megan and just sit and talk with them and listen, because I've seen enough of the Megan that has to be the life of the party. And she was like, honestly, you're a hypocrite, because you're not the same person. And she was like, I honestly don't know which Megan I'm going to get. And I didn't like the way that sounded. And I came home and I asked him, I was like, am I hypocritical? And he was like, yeah, at times you can be, just flat out. And so I really started to ask.
But we had built the foundation of trust.
But yeah, and that's what I was saying, is that because we
come
had
off harsh, and
right.
It wasn't harsh. I had told her during that time frame, I made a promise to her that I've never broken, and I never will. I said, you can ask me anything you want, and I'll tell you the honest to God answer, but don't ask me something you don't want to know the answer to.
And I really had to allow the Holy Spirit to start showing me these, these flaws that I had developed in growing up, and
just life,
just development, from things that I had believed about myself, things that I felt like I had to be for people to like me. And I thank that friend, and that person is a very, very good friend of mine that I really love, because she was the first person that was willing to hold up a mirror to my face and say, this is what we're getting, and this is really where I feel like the Lord wants you to be. And that's hard to hear. I mean, it was really hard to hear at that time, especially because I had already felt like I had failed. Right. I felt like I was failing at marriage. I felt like I was failing at my job, because I wasn't the best teacher. I wasn't the one that everybody asked questions. I wasn't the one that people wanted to see their lesson plans after. I was just starting to be part of the worship team, and it was really an identity breakdown, where I felt like everything that I felt like who I was, the Lord was starting to break down, in a really, really good way.
But in the willingness of both of us to not give up, which is why when we sit with couples, and we've sat in that living room dozens of times with couples now, and I've told them, if you're both willing to work on it, I don't care what. And there's been some crazy stories shared in that room, people, what they've done to each other and had done to them, and it's like God can redeem all of it if you're willing to work on it. If you're not willing to work on it, you can't. What do we say? You can't steer a ship that's not under power. It's just going to float. And so if you sit neutral and you never do anything, you can't fix it. If you're willing to move, even if you're moving in the wrong direction, as long as you're fully convinced the Lord's asking you to, right? Scripture says anything that doesn't proceed from faith is a sin. So if you truly believe that you're hearing the Lord and He's asking you to do something, then you do it, and you trust Him that He's big enough that even if you're wrong, He can course correct you, right? Because it's like, The easiest thing, I keep thinking about the cruise ship because we just got back off the ship, but like if you're 1 degree off at the beginning, an hour in, you're barely off course. A day in, you're off more. But 7 days in, 10 years in, you're way off. But the cool thing about being in the ocean and driving like my dad's boat and stuff, no matter where you're at, there's always a heading that'll get you back to where you need to go. But if you're not actively moving, you can't do anything. Even if I'm going in reverse, I can still get you there. Like, because you're still moving. But if you sit still and you shut the power off or you sit neutral, what's worse is if you sit neutral. Like, you know the word, you know what you should be doing, and you just don't do it. It's the most hypocritical thing because the engine's even running. You just got to, like, I'm not saying it's got to be full tilt, but if you just do anything, like, the Lord can get you there. It's like, if you're hot or cold, I'd rather you be hot or cold. You lukewarm, it'll spit you out.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you know where you should be, and you're not there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, he tells the Pharisees, you sin more because your own words testify against you because you know what you should be doing, and you're not doing it. At least if you didn't know, you could claim ignorance, but your beating is going to be, it talks about they'll be there in hell, but your beating is going to be worse because you knew what you should have done. But anyways, I'll be quiet about that.
Does that answer your question?
But all of that was going on in the background. So as we sought mentorship, both of us independently, because we realized at first we both had so much junk that if we tried to do it together, there was still too much hurt that we were going to bicker. And so there was a short period where we both had independent mentorship that we went and talked to that was godly and biblical, that then started, they didn't try to, oh, you're right, you know, Megan should have done this or should have, Megan doesn't know what she has, or you're right, Michael doesn't know what he has. They're like, no, they weren't holding the other spouse up to the world standard. They held you up to the Lord's standard. And when your mentor holds you up to the Lord's standard, and that's why we go back to the triangle, if you quit looking this way when it's broke, right, and you start going to the Father's going to pull you back together because he's a loving Father. And we talked about earlier off camera, like, how do you lead? How do you submit? Because that was another really hard thing during that time, right? Everything I did was like, well, you're just trying to force me to this, or.
Well, and I would immediately go to my mom.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you caught it, but he said a very, very good point. When we did seek out counsel, the counsel always pointed us, meaning the individual, not the spouse. Because at that moment, if the spouse is not there, you are the one that we can work on. And are you being held up to the standard of being like Christ and your responsibility? They never brought up the other spouse. They never talked about what the other spouse was not doing.
Or should be doing.
It was, what are you doing to be in the same alignment and the direction of the Lord? Whereas, obviously,
your parents. If you go to
my
your
parents, I mean,
anybody's parents, my parents.
Yeah, it's going to be as much as they don't want it to be, unless they're,
it's egregious,
schooled in it. It's going to be very difficult for them to see it as you not being the victim, because it's bias. And not saying that that's not good counsel, but you just need to be very, very careful, very selective on who it is that you go to seek counsel from, because it needs to be in alignment with what God's asked you to do, because it's never, his word does not return void. And using or bringing up the faults of the other spouse because they're not there or because they're not meeting where they need to be, obviously it's going to look like you're in the right.
Mm-hmm. Make you feel better. All you're doing is validating your feelings.
And we're not in it to validate your feelings. No. The Bible is not here to validate your feelings. The Bible is here to tell you how is it in God's character and what is it in you that's that you need to sharpen. That I don't want to say the word's broken, but we are broken. But because God is a loving, perfect Father, and because of the sacrifice that Jesus made that only He could make, that's the standard that we're being held to.
Because if you're always comparing yourself to the world, you'll always feel like you married the wrong person and that you can find someone that fits it better, which is a lie from the enemy, because all of us are broken in some way. And the real root of the issue is you're not comparing, you have an unjust measure that you're measuring by. Because,
you brought that up to Judah this morning. Or was it Judah or Selah? I think it was Selah, because she was like, that's not fair.
Oh, yeah. Shayla was saying something about how they got breakfast and she didn't. Well, she didn't get breakfast because she kept talking. She didn't sit and get it. And she said, well, that's not fair. I said, life's not fair. God's not fair, but he's just.
God's not fair, but he's just. And there's a difference in that. There's a difference in understanding what is, fairness and what's just.
And
because God isn't fair.
People have argued with me about that.
Yeah.
And I tell them, that's fine. Argue with me. Scripture, facts don't have feelings. They don't.
Well, and you had asked about that earlier, just the emotion that we were dealing with Sophie. Mm-hmm. I was in a very, very low place because I said those words. It's not fair that I did everything right. I got married, I tithe, and in that moment, I was just so frustrated because why did my kid have to get epilepsy? Why did she have to be born prematurely? What did I do wrong? It's not fair. It's not fair that I never drank, smoked, did drugs. I did everything right. It's not fair. No, but it's just. Is it just for Sophie to have epilepsy? It's part of being in a broken world. In that moment, my emotions went to, it's not fair. Mm-hmm. And no, it's not fair, but we're not in this world for looking for fairness. We're trusting in a just God that will bring us out of those hard, trying moments, being part of a broken world, being in a broken world.
What I was going to say, though, is that people will argue it. You have the story of the minas and the story of the talents. Mm-hmm. If God was fair, every person would have been given the same amount, and they're not. But he also says you've been given according to the amount of faith that you have. Why is that just not fair? It's unfair. If I can't manage $1,000, how am I going to manage $1 billion? Mm-hmm. It's going to kill me. Because I'm going to get wrapped up in my own conceit, my own ambition, my own sin. Because I now have the ability to do with it whatever I want. I'll consume my own life and kill my life. I'll get lost in sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or whatever, right? There's people I've met that they've been frustrated a lot of their life, and then later on in their life, they'll tell you it was actually God's justness that I never was super wealthy because I would have been conceited, I would have this, out of that, I would have used it to destroy the kingdom, not to build the kingdom, and vice versa. But to whom much is given, much is expected. There's things that you're trusted with, and the pivot on the Sophie thing too, though, is the justness of that. And I was praying about that particular thing when we were walking through some of the thicker parts of Soph's stuff. And I remember the Lord gently telling me, if you don't know, well, let me give you a little backstory. Soph's birth was very traumatic. She had a lot of challenges. It almost killed Soph and my wife. Financially, it was a $1.5 million birth just for Soph with all the things. My wife's was almost $1 million because of all the complications and everything else. But I say that because that's part of God's justness. Is what if she would have been born into a time where those services weren't available? What if she would have been born into a family who couldn't have managed that, didn't have the insurance to do that? Is it fair for me to let her just die? Not because death was never God's intention. But the point is, I entrusted her to you, and I gave you the resources to be able to take care of her. And I gave you the skills and ability, and it's up to you to steward them appropriately. So with the people and the resources, the true mammon, the true everything that I gave you all of that to be able to manage the kids that I gave you, the wife that I gave you, the influence that I gave you. And so he was sitting there, and he's like, the vision he gave me was, it's like he had a vending machine of souls that he was putting in these babies as they were born. And he knew in his omnipotence that Sophie was going to have some problems, challenges because of the brokenness of the world. But he knew that he was going to equip us to be able to handle it, and that we could actually walk through it, which is why I think Scripture says, looking back, I count all things joy for the Lord, all the trials. Sophie didn't do anything wrong to be born with some of the challenges she has. Megan didn't do anything to cause the challenge. Sophie didn't do anything to cause the challenge. Judah didn't do anything to cause the challenge. Neither did the twins. But the Lord equipped us to handle every one of their personalities, every situation that we walk through. should we submit our will to listen to the Father? I won't give you more than you can handle with his help. So, when I'm feeling like, and I'm about to land the plane, when I'm feeling like I'm getting overwhelmed, when I'm feeling like the waves are coming over my head, I fully believe with every fiber in me that it's designed that way and God walks me in that way. Why? Just like Megan just said a minute ago, it was an identity breaking. God can't, remember the scripture that said, God will never give you more than you can handle with his help. Everybody takes that in negative context. I also think it's in a positive. He can never give you more blessings than what you can handle. And if you're not willing to submit your will to have it completely broken so he can rebuild it how it needs to be built to handle the full amount of the blessings, you'll never fully actually ascertain and be able to fully walk in the blessings that he has designed for you. Think about Paul. Paul couldn't have walked where he walked without being completely broken. Joseph couldn't have walked to where he was. I mean, look at the transformation at the beginning. He just has a dream, and he runs his mouth so much his brothers want to kill him about it. Won't shut up. Little brother syndrome to the nth degree. To then when he's second in command in Egypt and literally can kill his brothers. What does he do when he sees them? Does he have any revenge in his heart? No, he's weeping and crying. Moses, right? Same concept, completely broken in Pharaoh's court. Has all this power, then he strikes down this Egyptian, kills the Egyptian, realizes that he's hated, it feels like he's hated by both people. He's a man with no tribe. Runs to the desert, builds his family, or has his family in the desert. God calls him back out of the desert to lead his people out. I can keep going, Aaron. Anyways, every person, you see the cases where they did well, and honestly, if you read it, you see the cases where they don't handle it.
Well,
Judas. Where did Jesus put Judas?
over the finances.
He knew where he was going to break. So what did he do? He put him in a situation where he could have submitted his will and overcame. The enemy doesn't attack you where you're weak. He attacks you where you're the strongest to keep you away from it or to twist it for him. Because if he knows that's your bent, if he knows that's one of your talents, and he gets you to convert it to the evil side, how much stronger is it for him? But if you can completely submit that to the will of the Father and let him break it and rebuild it, I say break it. Wherever he breaks your will off of it, where it's not done for your own admiration, it's done for him. He can truly release you in that, because otherwise, if it's always part of you, how did Lucifer fall? He kept part of the worship. I want to ascend. I want to be on the throne. I want to this. The root of all that is I. And so he had to break it. And so if you don't allow the breaking, you allow the fear to take over, where I'm afraid to be broken. I'm afraid to give it to God. I'm afraid that I might not look right. I'm afraid I may.
What people are going to think of me.
They are going to think you're jacked up. You are going to break. You are going to have issues, right? People are going to make fun of you. People are okay. Because if
Jesus also brought that up too.
But if you never let it get broken, it can't be rebuilt to the way that the Lord needs it, so he can fully release you, which is what happened in our marriage. He literally broke. God didn't break our marriage. We broke our marriage. But if we didn't submit to him to allow him to rebuild it, and we didn't rebuild it. Well, it's a continuous process, because all you do is you see more areas that you're broken once you learn how to read it, which is the frustrating part, because it's like, I don't want to deal with this one, because what's next? But that's a sin in itself too. But the point of it is, when you ask those questions, how did we work through it? Complete submission to the Father, and trusting people farther down the path, and finding a godly voice to help talk into it, knowing that there's not a quick fix, single answer, because there's not. I can't fix Megan. Megan can't fix me. You can't fix Diane. She can't fix you. But all we can do is look to the Father and try to get closer to him, which also goes into the other question y'all asked. How do you transition from being independent individuals making decisions to truly leading and following, right? Because it's different to lead in a godly manner, to follow in a godly manner, and how do those look, right? And are they domineering or not? In that time, me leading my family by the world standard would have been like kicking the dude's teeth in, doing all this other stuff. Right. But leading them was submitting and asking the Father, what do I need to do to not lose my marriage? Mm-hmm. What does my wife need right now? How do I shepherd my wife? Because shepherding my wife isn't putting the hook around her and dragging her. There are times where maybe we have something happens, right? And we've had maybe one or two times where I'm like, hey, as the spiritual leader of the house, we're doing this. Mm-hmm. But it's been literally life or death situations. Most of it's, what do you think? What are you hearing when you pray about it? And I usually, because of our dynamics and because my wife's a people pleaser, and everybody knows I'm a people pleaser. I'll ask her what she's hearing first, because my opinion won't change. And
but that's also an indicator of where my heart is too. Because if he asks me a question about something that's on his mind, if my mind isn't even in that same vein, then it's like, okay, Lord, what am I missing? How come this hasn't? Because something else that we've learned is that the Lord isn't going to put something on Michael's heart that is going to push me away, or it shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And if it does, then that's a check. That's a check in my heart. That's
both of our hearts.
And both of our hearts, right. And he's mentioned that before, where he's had to make a decision, and he's like, I'm too close to this decision. I'm too close emotionally. I need you to pray and ask the Lord what we need to do. But whenever he's asked me those questions, I'm like, my mind isn't even there. Like, I'm not even thinking about that. So what is it that I'm allowing to take a lot of my time, energy, and excitement, that I'm missing this heart's desire, which is submission. Yeah. And that's not always easy, because it's like, well, I'm going 90 miles a minute. Is it on? Oh, I'm going 90 miles a minute. Where is he at? What's he doing? Why are we not on the same page? So that was a check for me whenever he asks, what do you think about this? And if I ask him, what do you mean, what do I think about it? I haven't even been thinking about that. Right. Yeah. That's a check. And that's something that we've learned, because I'm either not listening, I'm not looking, and my heart is not, I'm allowing my heart to get distracted with my goals, my ambitions, me. And there's no I in us. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's going to be kind of a story of backbone of that first encounter of you guys being married, me seeing that. And with that insight and what he shared over the time when we got married, that really set our standard for when we got married, we were going to find a new church, because he gave me that insight where you guys struggle with going to someone that is sighted, that is going to say, oh, you're always right, you're always wrong. Yeah. So he really gave me that insight on how to really base our marriage. And we went to new church. We did all the different things, and then been able to get insight with that. And then the struggle you guys went through of, I didn't know all those details that you just shared. And that makes sense now, because he said that wasn't a place that I can share, because she's not ready for anyone to hear it yet. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important thing that I think people don't realize, is everybody doesn't need to know what your other hand is doing, because that's your guys' marriage at that point. Mm-hmm. Now you can share about it to help others get to a place where they can kind of grow, they can be able to be confident and be able to learn from your guys' experience. But that's something that me and Diane were working through, going through, and everything else, is at some point we'll be able to share those struggles too. But I also think that some people are too share hungry to get people's attention, instead of just working on and building the trust that you guys shared, that was such a pivot point for your marriage. Now that you guys have stuff, and I would love to continue, and we do this when we sit down, to just be like hitting milestones of different things that you guys went through, and then us, because we're going to be a little bit later on, like right now, you guys saying how to make decisions. That's something. And then expectations. We talked about it in the podcast with the Two Bros in a Boat. I think that guys are going to be able to understand from 15 years in a marriage of expectation of when you have a decision, and then me going into it, I'm like, I have this expectation, she has an expectation, we're longer in life, so we have already expectations that are molded by your marriage. Mm-hmm. That for me, she has, how many other brothers were married before we got married? 2, 3? 3. So she has expectations of that. She also has an expectation of a single mom raising her only sister and 5 brothers. So there's that kind of dynamic. My parents didn't get a divorce, but I found out later in life that my dad had 2 wives before my mom. They didn't really share that when we were growing up. I found out that later. And I really think it's really interesting. The expectations dictate so much of the first years of the marriage, and your willingness to have those conversations have led us to have those conversations, and we're not perfect at it at all, but we're willing to have conversations. And I think that's the point that we kind of talked about the last episode of the couple sitting. They're not even willing to have the conversations. They're going to just have, oh, that's her closet, that's his closet. We don't talk about those things.
Right.
We just move forwards because, like you said, my work's important. The church responsibilities are more important. My kids are more important. And then my spouse, and then God, when I have time, I'll go to Him. And I think that's really important for people to realize is having someone in your life to have the honest conversation to make you want you to be better,
right.
To sacrifice my own self and not having some goal to benefit myself more than I benefit the other person. Makes a chain reaction.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing for people to realize, and I hope people get from our friendship. And then I would love to get in the conversation about me and you, how we butted head over the years.
Well, it's because we're so much alike.
Yeah, and that's been such a frustrating thing for, like, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to go down there because I don't want to cause, like, at some points we've had conversations like, I feel like I'm going to break up your marriage. I don't want to come down.
I like you, but you're not that important.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you guys would bicker so much, and I know we've had conversations at the kitchen table later on that we've developed more, is like, I felt like you were jealous of me and Mikey's relationship sometimes because we could have conversations and it wouldn't frustrate us. And you would be so frustrated by the time I left. I'm like, I don't want to come down because I don't want him to be in a bad place when I leave, and you guys would fight. Like, I would have those conversations with him. I'm like, this frustrates me. And I would love to just develop that because I know there's people out there with, and then I know you guys at the beginning, you love each other in a way, but you're so different. She wants to sit there and say, Megan, just stop.
Just stop. Just pause. Just
breathe. Yeah. I want to hug you, and it's okay. And you want to tell Diane, you're so slow, and you're just sitting there. Put your skates on, we're going. Let's go. And I think that's so amazing because you share all the stories of biblical, and I'm right there with you with, I know God, but I don't have a relationship with God right now, and I'm trying to build that back. I'm trying to trust Him because we can go into my past stories, and we'll probably will in the Two Bros at a Boat, of my expectation of God and what He would be able to do with my family, because we were raised in poverty. I don't know how many cars got repossessed when I was growing up. Living in a trailer house.
We've had that happen.
All those,
we've had that happen.
And that sort of stuff. And I know Diane, she lives by, so money for me is very, very important to have a safety net. Like, if I don't have a certain amount in the bank, I almost have like anxiety, and I don't hold my emotions very well. And I let Diane know, I was like, hey, we need to do this, and she's like, no, go, God will work it out. I don't want to worry about it. I'm like,
what you talking about, bro?
Yeah, so we can talk about it because I know we've had that discussion, and I really appreciate you guys sharing that. But I wanted to let you guys know that the chain reactions that from your past has helped us dramatically, and I hope all of us can help someone else down the road, because there's a movie made a long time ago. It's called Pay It Forward. I don't know if you guys ever saw it, but this young man, and the movie is you do a good thing for another person, and then that person does something good for 2 other people, and it just multiplies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this, just having a friendship that has been based for so long, you guys have such a marriage for so long, and then just everyone's having their skills can multiply where people will see this. And I hope you guys will just cherish the moments and vulnerability that we're going to do with everybody. Because I think it's going to be such a glorious thing. And it's changed us dramatically just having our relationship. And you being willing to say over and over again, stop trying to fix it. Because I love fixing things.
Yeah.
I did too. But what I had to realize, especially in the marriage, if I'm fixing my wife, I'm subconsciously telling my wife she's broken.
And
nobody wants to chronically be told they're broken.
Yeah.
Because it's a turnoff. It broke the intimacy. Because
and it was something simple. It was a simple switch. And like whenever we would have engaging conversations, and we have to pick up kids in a second. But it was something very simple in that whenever I would come to him with issues, because girls will talk. Girls will share their emotion. It's a lot easier to share it with other girls usually. But one of the questions that he asked me early on was, what are your dreams? What are your ambitions? What are your goals? And when I told him I don't really have any, it was because I didn't feel that security net. I didn't trust him. And once we got through that, we started talking. And so when I would say, hey, can we talk about something? He would always come back with, okay, am I listening to understand? Or am I listening to support? Okay, to me that meant, okay, am I just verbally explaining why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling? Or am I really wanting some help from my spouse who knows me in and out?
And so that solution, or you want me to listen?
Yes, do you want a solution, or do you want me to listen? Which obviously I heard it 2 different ways. And that was really tender. That was something very simple that he fixed early on. And so whenever we have those conversations of like, I'm struggling with something, I need your help, he'll ask me, okay, is this listening to understand, or is this listening to support? Which in turn he says, am I listening to...
You want me to fix this, or
do you just want me to listen? Which I was very thankful for. But, yeah.
I have one other point I'm going to make, then we wrap up.
Okay.
I wanted to end on a point of encouragement, though, because a lot of it can feel overwhelming and frustrating. And the point of encouragement was even bringing up the financial thing, right, and the 2 different viewpoints, and talking through if there's, like when we had our intimacy and our sexual challenges and issues and all the other ones. The beauty in it is, and I was telling Megan this the other day, being on the other side of a major rift in a marriage, working through it, and now looking back, when I start seeing them, I start getting giddy sometimes in our own relationship, because I realize God's about to work on something and fix something. And I told him, I see him working in y'all because both of y'all's positions 100% aren't right. God will just fix it isn't right, and I have to have a net isn't just right, because he tells us steward, who doesn't take care of his own home is worse than an unbeliever, right? A man that doesn't provide for his own family is worse than an unbeliever. And he who doesn't build something without stopping and counting the cost, because then should he not be able to finish it, to walk by and mock him. Scripture talks about that, but it also talks about don't let your heart be tied up with your money. So only a perfect father can take 2 polar opposite viewpoints, blend them together, because if you were both like that, you may have a nice bank account, but you wouldn't enjoy anything. Mm-hmm. If you both sat and did nothing, you wouldn't have anything. Right? I say nothing, like you weren't worried about finance, right? You would have no money in there, but you would live a carefree life. Like you wouldn't have stress on the other side. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them is what you're called for 100%. It's a blend in the middle. Right. Just like me trying to be 100% efficient on everything we did and how we moved and everything else, like even on a vacation or whatever, you miss the joy of just being present in the moment. But if you're always present in the moment, there may not be a future. Right. Yeah. And so there's got to be a blend of the 2 and learning how to lean into each other, because when you build a plan. Let's just talk finance because it's easier when to talk right now.
Okay, wrap it up.
I will. When you have a budget, you have a plan, you have a certain amount, and you work that, and you do what you feel like the Lord told you in that aspect. The spoiler alert is things are still going to come up and it's going to get blown. That doesn't mean you don't try. right? You do what you can, then you pray about you do what you can, you pray about the direction to go, but then when the uncertainty happens, that's when you trust the Lord. So you have all the makings of the right blend. It's just figuring out how do you blend them.
Yeah.
So the encouragement is it's all there. I'd be more concerned if all you ever want to talk about is every dime that you save, or you don't want to even look at a bill, right? I'm giving over exaggerations, because then you'd be so far off the spectrum in either direction, it wouldn't be. But the joy of it is going to be, and the cool thing is going to be the blending of the two, because that's where it becomes very very strong, and it has the most strength in it, because you have the vision for the direction, but you also have the faith in between to bridge the gap, to be able to continue to walk in the blessing, because when they get blended, that's where they need to be.
Yeah. So with that being said, we wrap it up and we say, keep on keeping on, instead of like exactly what Life Church says, but keep on keeping on and trust the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. With that, we love you. Thank you for asking, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.